on Instagram, but I'm gonna see what's going on out there in the wonderful world of. I'm so far all over the place, man, right now with these topics. Yo. Okay. This is WNDC. NDC. WNDC, NDC is where it started. It stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. NDC. And what it's evolved into now is just necessarily a continuation only from the talk station. I really suck so far at being somewhat of an entertaining presenter on these subjects and whatnot, and I'll get better or I won't. But I'll still be doing this because right now we are in a state of need to actually inform, entertain, enlighten each other more than just trolling on people's posts for no apparent reason. So with that being said, if in any form or time that any of this comes at some point of entertaining, educating, enlightening you, I hope that you can find my Cash App. Just due to the mere fact that, well, this is all I got to do right now. And, due to this COVID situation and whatnot, many of us are forced to make time with our spare time. And we've got way too much spare time. And in the process of it, these trending subjects are really, really doing a number on us, especially people of color. Not just people of color in America, but people all over the world. And tonight or today or this weekend is no more different on so many different levels. And I think what I want to do is start this off by giving you bits and pieces of the snippets. I will be including snippets from TanyaTKO and from Sideman TV and from the NaiaJaxn and maybe even Derrick and bits and pieces. And well, being that I'm not getting paid for it, the least I'm doing is tagging those people. So, we're all following. So, yeah, maybe we can find a way of coming to some form of so, yeah.
Ear, let them hear. And
I don't think anybody's just finished. I think even once you think you've finished, by that time you probably have grown into a different version of yourself.
Let those who have an ear, let them hear. And let the healing that comes from our situation be a testament of how God can resurrect something from the dead in real life. He can resurrect a marriage from the dead. He can resurrect a person from the dead. So let that be a testament
you can achieve
to that.
It.
So I just end with this. Let those who have an ear, let them hear. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't, we'll continue to pray for you. We release the blessings of the Lord upon your lives. And that's it.
Well, we're waiting, Sideman.
Okay.
Hey, this is me. Hold on. Let me get you onto the broadcast. All right. Hold on. I got to get my thing inside my ear. Hold on.
TanyaTKO and Sideman.
Oh, look. You got dimples, ladies.
No, don't do that.
Oh my goodness, side man, how is you, bruv?
Bro is all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well. You know what? This is just going to be a short little get together right here, because I want to do an entire collaboration with you. I just want to find out from you, how did things go after you did that video? How did it go for you?
Well, to be honest,
Hey Kim, how are you?
You have your detractors, which you have every time I do videos.
I just want to apologize for you not being able to hear the full recording of this broadcast because it will be it's now live on YouTube.
Black
and there's
Lives
some
Matter
things right now playing
just about the black
in the
community.
background. That,
I received a lot of praise
How you
from
doing this
people.
evening?
When I did that, I was receiving praise from both men and women. But the second I started talking about women's issues and I'm talking about us men holding ourselves more accountable, it's like it was just a switch. And like in terms of generally, mostly from the men. And it's just like
wait, mostly from the men. So there were some women who had issues.
Yeah, sometimes
Wow.
But it's understandable because sometimes people are questioning your authenticity, and I love to let people know that I'm not a Derrick Jaxn. I'm not coming from the position of saying I am better than anybody else. I'm saying we need to do the work as men. Like we need to, like me as well. Like I'm. Like I don't feel like any.
How did things go after you did that video? How did it go for you?
Well, to be honest, obviously you have your few detractors, which you have every time I do videos of that nature, which it really surprises me. I kind of started on my journey talking about more serious topics last year. I started talking about Black Lives Matter and things of that nature, just about the black community. And the second I started talking about women's issues and I'm talking about us men holding ourselves more accountable, it's like there was just a switch. And just
really?
like in terms of from generally mostly from the men, and it's just like the students.
Wait, mostly from the men? So there were some women who had issues?
Yeah, sometimes.
Wow.
But it's understandable because sometimes people are questioning your authenticity, and I love to let people know that I'm not a Derrick Jaxn. I'm not coming from the position
I'm not a Derrick Jaxn.
I am better than anybody else. I'm saying we need to do the work as men. Like we need to, like me as well. Like I'm like I don't feel like any man is free of guilt because we live in a world of patriarchy. The world that we live in is skewed in favor of men and at the detriment of women. And we aren't out there with signs and placards of complaining and protesting about this. And for me, it's one of the biggest travesties of the world because we're in a first world country or a third world country, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whatever class, whatever race, there is no part or section of society where women aren't being abused, misused, mistreated. Nowhere. It's nowhere. It's a bigger global pandemic than COVID ever has been.
And what stands out the most?
There is no part or section of society where women aren't being abused, misused, mistreated. Nowhere. It's nowhere.
And where we are right now, and all this talk that we're having about this Derrick and NaiaJaxn and Tanya and everybody else, there's everybody right now, and even Mr. Keith Samuels is doing a great job at something that most people feel is just, for us as people of color in America, we've really started to dive in and indulge in all of this video. We've surpassed the talk radio of sorts, and in the process of it, living on Front Street has allowed us to get into the whole celebrity realm, and that's what put this whole Derrick Jaxn saga into play. But what I want to first say that all of us, Tanya, Sideman, and so many others are saying right now, because I don't think I can even recall one black dude that would want to be the Rush Limbaugh of our whole perspective enough to side with Derrick. So let me make this straight. As my man side dude stated, it's about that misogyny, that patriarchy, that fact that we are now, as a world perspective, not just America, all over the world, we're still now living with the reality that, the absolute most downgraded, person on this planet is our females. We have been basically trying to emancipate our minds from this patriotic mentality that is structured in our history, in our world, in our humanity. And yet what frustrates us all the most is the mere fact that for many of the people in this country, we have a very unique struggle, because while we are now in the state that we are, many of the people who are now adults are unaware and incapable of being able to understand the complexities as to how it's come to this and how far back has it been so different. From the time as people of color that we were basically emancipated. Upon emancipation, we've got the Reconstruction. The Reconstruction is basically just due to the mere fact that the result of emancipation required this country as a whole to reconstruct itself and its standards just the way we are today in 2021, in another state of reconstruction, by way of our ability to now be able to not only respect the struggle of people of color, but also the suffrage of women, and then the feminist side, and then the militant movement, and all the other obstacles and whatnot that occurred between the late 50s to the late 90s. And for a lot of these people that are now in this whole perspective right now, the majority of these people, those Gen X's, Y's, Z's, and millennials and so forth and so on, are actually adults and incapable of actually being able to recall in vivid color the shift in our reality and culture and how awkward it's allowed us to become right now due to just that mere fact. We're in this struggle of, patriarchy and misogyny, or the assumption that we are included into the level that we feel the same complaint would come from people that are not of our culture and color. And the coinky dink in this situation is the mere fact that while, I am a man and Tanya's a woman and Sideman is a Brit. And where that fits into this whole situation is that, unlike ourselves, the experience in which he speaks on is shared by us to a degree. The difference is that they see their existence on their country, on their side, a little bit differently than we do, due to the mere fact that it doesn't really revolve from the full out colonial experience that we complain about, and the mere fact that, well, they're a little more culturally complex, because they're different. They speak a different language, a different culture. Their day-to-day experiences change due to the mere fact that part of their society operates in a more cool state. Whereas here we are structured by our divines and our talenteds and our HBCUs and our social orders and classisms and connections to other cultures, when it becomes convenient to not be like the ignorant slave people, and understanding that it's not an insult, it's a reality when you think about the mere fact that while we embrace this emancipation of all people of color are all enslaved people, we have to understand that that doesn't mean that it has not been that long. Maybe 100 and something odd years might seem like a long time unless you figure out that we're still in a state that even in 2020, we find more of our people, just like a lot of the other people in the same financial class or social status of other colors, that still don't know how to read, still have never had a moment in time where they've been in a in a cool culture. They haven't had a privilege, that we would, initially just assume just because you're white, you've had it right all your life, and not necessarily be able to relate to the mere fact that no, that's not really that much. I mean, when we talk about these little conundrums and associations, we also have to figure that the people that we talk about in these things, like my man Derrick and whatnot, are not necessarily your typical everyday, just like everyone else kind of people, because, well, they're educated. They're not broke. They're, their problems are a little bit more or lesser than our problems. And yet they're still the same to some degree. But half of the reason why this has gotten to be such a messy mess is not just due to the mere fact that we are once again sitting back on this Jim Jones kind of audacity to have fell for the okie doke, or for what we would say now, the eggplant and the tailpipe. And
it's a bigger global pandemic than COVID ever has been. And it's been going on for decades untold. And when I see the amount of pushback that I get from men, it shows me that there's a system in place that is innate, that is being fostered within men's minds to reject this, to see this as a giving up of power rather than just equality. Like a lot of me trying to boost women above us rather than just us treating women more fairly. So it's crazy when you think about it.
Hey.
Wow. You know what?
There's a lot of
what's this? The stuttering. Why is the stuttering happening?
That I'm broadcasting right now on YouTube. That is not plugged into my phone. This is just to back up the scene.
Why do you feel that you finding love is
the raw
going to
piece of
dilute your message? So you have to be single and
else.
out here?
Because of Derrick.
No.
What? Pardon?
It's not that I have to be single and out here.
But because of Derrick and Tanya and Sideman and so many of us that are all talking about these topics.
Goodness. They say at least you're honest.
Being
they
honest.
Want you to speak the men's secret. So what is the biggest secret men are keeping right now?
What's the biggest secret men are keeping?
Yeah.
Come on.
What's the biggest secret men are keeping?
Yeah, what's the biggest secret? Come on.
All right. Now, I'll play his answer and whatnot in there, but I want to jump in and point out the sadistic humor and the mere fact that rarely do you find a platform where people, and she had like thousands of people on her chat in her live that were majority women, men too, but. And as that question came up, you could see in the comments how people just waited on bated breath for, the question that in order for her to even ask the question in her thing, people had to donate, do a Cash App donation. And if the spirit moved her and their donation, she would put you up there on Front Street and actually ask and include you into her broadcast, which I think is wonderful. One day when I grow up, that would be sure nice. Anywho, the mere fact that I actually watch for a rare occasion a lot of the usual suspects, all of these women and whatnot, We're sitting back. Good question. Good question. Good question. What secret are men keeping from us? What secret do men have? And what stood out the most that I thought about was the mere fact that in many of the cases and the skirmishes that we have with many of the women today on many of these platforms, rarely do you see any woman actually believe that there's anything that a man has that they're not aware of enough that would make them intrigued. Even give them the respect of believing that if you know something we don't know, why don't you tell us? When most people would not let a man in a debate even believe that they would even have a concern or even believe that they have anything that would change the way that they feel about men. That's the secret. The fact that, yes.
What's the biggest secret men are keeping?
Yeah.
What's the biggest secret men are keeping?
Yeah, what's the biggest secret? Come on, reveal it. Off the top of your head, just come with what you think.
I don't know what the biggest secret men are keeping, but I'll say one thing. Like, I don't know how men get away with excuses about liking girls' pictures when they're in a relationship. I don't know how they get that one out because that just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense to me. Okay, well, one thing is, and it's a thing I've been thinking a lot about recently, even when I think about myself.
Okay, we're listening.
Is that, like, I think we're trying to, a lot of men, not all men, but like, are trying to impress manhood. They're trying their younger self. Like,
we's gonna get this together.
It's like one day I just woke up and I was just like, what is this all about? What's all the girl getting about? Is that, like, I think we're trying to, a lot of men, not all men, but like, are trying to impress manhood. They're trying their younger self. Like, it's like one day I just woke up and I was just like, what is this all about? What's all the girl getting about?
Now, this is where the rubber hits the road from my perspective, because I really enjoyed and respected seeing the perspective of a young, very articulate British black man who is in the same fight in the same way we are, to a point where if we didn't open our mouths, you would swear that we were related. And yet his world and his reality is still a bit awkward, in the mere fact that from where he is and whatnot, and where we are here in this country, from this standard, is very, very, very complex. You know, we've gone from some free men and some slaves to emancipation to elitism and classism and boule and social statuses that were sanctioned and sectioned off into alpha, beta, zeta, at least delta, you know, all of these Greek kind of, when most people still to the day, and their at least high school educated selves, have never been taught Greek enough to understand that. And yet, in the mix of that, there's a whole lot of Egyptology and other things in there that they would utilize in their recognition of the class of people that take this kind of oath and connection to being members of certain levels of unity. And unlike the UK and a lot of other places like that, we've had our own unique culture and society to live by. And all those things were hard hitting and heavy enough that up until the late 50s, the population of people of color were, if nothing else, more partnered, and our communities were more structured and tighter, and we were more conservative from an outward state, even if we were more unique in our own communities. We had a don't ask, don't tell DL kind of existence by way of the enlightened people trying to fit in with, no, sir, I ain't trying to tell you I can read, sir. I'm not going to try to argue with you, sir. And now nobody has to call nobody sir or anything in this country, and yet we're still suffering from what we call post-traumatic slave syndrome in our own unique ways. And while we at one point had a certain pride in our culture and our race as a whole, at a certain point when we start getting real close to our emancipation, our encaptors start thinking, what can we do to slow these people down from taking over what they have no idea belongs to all of them? We just hold all the money. We make up what they can know. We give them their own morality. We all believe that kind of concept existed in our history, and yet here we are as adults, not being capable of first considering, ain't this a beat? You know, we keep acting like we have surpassed the state of enlightenment that we believe we are deserving of, and all of these topics that we're speaking of right now. And yet, and still, it's only still at a state where realizing that we're still in this patriotic monarchy of sorts, where misogynistic awareness or understanding is basically built into the very structure of our race, religion, and culture and customs to such a degree that for people of color, as they at least allowed that to be more of a above the line kind of new reality, there's no feminist movement for Black men. And Black women and Black men are in total different kind of perspectives due to the disintegration of our customs, cultures, protocols, and provisions that we used to install into our offspring. And so as the baby boomers drop the whole entire ball, all of the other generations that we're talking about, that many of you are, all suffer from a degenerate level of neglect, in the same fashion of that kind of little thing that they used to do, where you'd line up in a row, and there's one person, you go up to them and you tell them a certain thing, and then without saying it out loud where anyone else can hear, they tell the next person to them, and next person to them, and next person to them, and next person to them. And by the time that you get to this end, the last person gets to say what it is that they were told from that progression. And we all know how that turned out, right? Well, this is where we're at.
Like, what is it actually about?
Yeah.
Who am I impressing? And I realized, for me, I can't speak for other men, but for me, I was impressing the younger version of myself that didn't get girls. It's like I was living for him, and it was like I kept living with his insecurities that I didn't need to have anymore. I kept living with his like, you know what I mean, like his doubts about himself. And he's just like, at some point, you just gotta be like, enough is enough. Now you've done it, you've proven it.
Now here we are. And another one of those little points that I had to put out right here is, even as he articulately said exactly what he said, the difference in his plight and many other people of color in this country, men, whom feel in the same manner that they do. See, one of those secrets that women don't know is that black men have had the same kind of dream that what black women have. I want to be the emancipated person of my generation. And yet when women started roaring, here, I am woman, hear me roar, they had some substance to it. But when black men start trying to take on this, misogynistic expectations that is tied to their very state of being, that insecurity and whatnot is stronger at all levels of unpopularity in their society. And while he said that, I kind of reflected on my younger self and how I was so uniquely different due to the mere fact that I was a little older into a whole different kind of perspective of life. So even when I was in high school, the majority of the time that I was in high school, I was also working in one of the largest nightclubs in my town. And I was boy. Hey, boy, go give me some beer. Hey, this, that, and the other. And I ran the coat check. And nobody was going to turn them or anybody else in because one of the owners was a retired police chief. So, come on, man. And so while a lot of people struggled in school and their social circles of, always wanting to be the popular guy that gets all the girls, I lived a certain existence in school where I wasn't pressed. And due to the mere fact that I wasn't pressed, I was kind of popular. Not that I was kind of popular, but I was into a bunch of things. So it wasn't like I was the big guy in any one of those things. I wasn't the big athlete. I wasn't the big, smart guy. I wasn't the big artist or the big singer or this, that, and the other, but I was in all of those little things like that and a bit in pieces to a point where I had a supporting role. And yet I didn't do it because I wanted the girls. I didn't even date anybody close to my age until I was almost in my 30s. I, had never been really attracted to people my age or younger, just due to the mere fact that they were so immature, so elementary in their expectations of what life exists in, just due to the mere fact that I lived in the dark side. When some people were just trying to get their first kiss, I was having full-on raw sex with grown women, 20, 25 years my elder, calling me sir and daddy. And I had my own money and I didn't have a curfew and, nobody, I'll never forget when my mom pulled my collar one time and said, you need to stop messing with these old women. They're crazy. And she was right, because any older woman, and I mean, I'm 16 with a 32-year-old submissive, and now that I look back at that, any 32-year-old woman that I could see today that's still that's out there making, having a submissive, having a sexual, having a sensual, full-blown raw a sexual kind of emotional relationship with a big for his own size 16-year-old boy. It's gotta be crazy. Most times that's usually their defense when they go to court. And it's not like they don't exist. We've all seen, more than our normal, thought of existence in the news as of late. As a matter of fact, one of the things I saw in the news was this black woman working a juvenile court just got arrested for having a sexual relationship with a teenager. There's her family, her future, her career, all that gone for some teenage dingling from some teenager with a criminal element worth being locked up, but not in prison. And yet, his captive state was capable of actually being able to corrupt her whole entire life and the life of many of the people in her genetics. And yet, I didn't have to ask the girls to dance and get turned down. I didn't worry about that. I didn't, when some people were just trying to be social and find a debutante ball or anything else of that nature, I was shacking. I was having so many different levels of advanced sexuality with grown people that only the fear at a certain point in my growing up did I have at the possibility that even as a teenager, there's nothing more scary than somebody's grandmother right now realizing that they may have been impregnated by a teenager they were unaware was that young. Yeah. Prior to them, you know. And yet this guy, this shy dude, he's actually straight up serious. He's a youngin'. Saying, you know, hey, side guy. Nobody's going to disrespect a side guy. He's just a side guy.
It's like, how much time do we as men need to prove that, oh, I can get a girl to like me? I've done it now. You did it now. You can stop. You get what I'm saying? It took a long time for me to be like, yo, you can actually just stop. And one of the things is that, like, okay, so not to be crude, but it's like sometimes a man has what we would call post-nut clarity. I don't need to go any deeper into that, do I? For you to understand what I mean.
You said post-nut clarity?
Huh.
Yeah.
You mean like post-ejaculatory clarity?
Yeah. It's like you can achieve that without doing it.
I'm a proud transition.
There is, you are ignoring a whole bunch of factors.
Okay. Now, post-ejaculative. Oh man, what did she say? How did she say this? Oh my God. Let's see if I can catch that without messing up.
That only become relevant to you once you remove the biggest factor that was the most important to you out of the way. So it's almost like the moon eclipsing the sun. It's bigger than the moon. What happens there is you are done it now. You did it now. You can stop. You get what I'm saying? It took a long time for me to be like, yo, you can actually just stop. And one of the things is that, like, okay, so not to be crude, but it's like sometimes a man has what we would call post-nut clarity.
Post-nut clarity.
I don't need to go any deeper into that, do I? For you to understand what I mean.
You said post-nut clarity? Yeah. You mean like post-ejaculatory clarity?
Yeah.
Now, what I really dug about that whole exchange was just the mere fact that while he is a young man, identified it as post-nut clarity, she said, oh, you mean post-ejaculatory clarity? Now, when women envision a male orgasm, or what they believe to be an orgasm, they speak of it in an ejaculatory manner, you know? And young man, he spoke of it as a nut. Now, this is where the rubber hits the road. A lot of things that have been coming up with this whole relationship dynamic thing. You know, once a cheater, always a cheater. You know, men, you think with your dicks anyway. And that's the reason why so-and-so and this, that, and the other. If you knew all these things enough to keep saying them out of your mouth, then you wouldn't keep accusing these poor, pitiful humans for having no post-nut clarity. I'm just a squirrel trying to get a nut. And every now and then, when I do, it is what it is. And in too many cases, the whole desire of getting that is lost on what every woman blames every man for having no emotional concern as to how they did it. And it's not an excuse, no more than any woman could admit publicly that good eggplant can make a woman that knows darn well right from wrong forget. More women can sit back and only admit within themselves, because to admit it outward is be like coming to Jesus. They ain't ready either. And yet, still, the only way we're going to be able to heal each other is to be as transparent as we wish men to be. And while everyone says, "Well, why you got to keep putting it on us?" If you are supposed to be the most all powerful, if the P is power, if you are the womb man, you are this, that, and the other, then what we're saying is not an insult. It's a, hey, what you doing? We got more slippage on both ends of the genetics and both ends of the genders. And it's even deeper for people of color, because unlike all these other cultures that have had the access to high value life for more hundreds of years than we can even imagine, all of us being allowed to aspire to now,
Like, you can achieve that without doing it.
I'm a proud transgender.
There is, you are ignoring a whole bunch of factors that only become relevant to you once you remove the biggest factor that was the most important to you out of the way. So it's almost like the moon eclipsing the sun. It's bigger than the moon, but because the moon is closer in distance, it eclipses the sun, even though the sun is more important than the moon, right?
That was a moment of brilliance. And in a no simp manner, the statement is true. It's like the moon eclipsing the sun. And this patriarchy has built this society of non-black, powerful, male, toxic existence, superiority, that allowed them to naturally demand the structure, to stand upon the structure of misogyny. And due to the suffrage and the feminist movement and the civil rights movement and everything, and the LGBT, all of this to this date has gotten us out of the state of what existed only several years back, but still in a majority of the people at that levels, excuse me, instinct. And it's hard for us to think outside of the box that we have been structured to believe we're no different than white men. You're a man. Y'all always have had that. And the mere fact that we can't even shake our own selves up to go, excuse me, no offense, but I mean, let's keep it back in the black that we call ourselves, because we have not been fully emancipated as a whole to such a degree that the whole world of people of color, of black folks, are still rooting for all Black Lives Matter. And yet we scatter each time we have to stand between each other and try to express how what you think you know about me and what I think I know about you. is skewed. And it's skewed in every state of existence, regionally, country, and continent, and culture, and degrees. This new world experience that we're having right now is only understood once you realize that all of the blackness that boy, that youngin, is speaking of right now, and in the same age group as Tanya, maybe a little younger, the reality is, while we are so similar, what makes us different is he's living in the old world evolution to where we are today. And we're living in a new world existence that was structured by a patriarchy that they decided to bring and command as their own, with the excuse of having to escape from the old world in order for them to be access to something that only the royals, you couldn't be a peasant, get away with this. Now we can't respect the mere fact that it's not that being a peasant is a bad thing. But when somebody tells you that just because you make this amount of money and you deserve, or you decide that you deserve this particular type of person, I'm making almost six figures or whatnot, and I deserve a six-figure plus man that can take care of all the bills and this, that, and the other, and be loyal to me and this, that, and the other, and yet 40-50% of all people of color, men of color, only earn 40, 50, 60 at best. And yet, in this white culture, it's not much more different. The only difference is that we're a minority. And we're so many kinds of minorities that we often forget how we are not quite the same. And yet we lack the ability of being able to notice and understand how many of them share the same problems in their own little way. And they're now in a state where at least they had, the bragging rights of saying, it could be worse, darling. What could it be? You could be black. Ha 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 ha. Now we're thinking that we want the 1950s expressional desire of what life is, and yet we can't count on our hands the amount of people of color who are capable of actually existing in that. And yet this is WNDC in DC. And the reason why I keep trying to mention that to you is because while there's many people out here who might say, yeah, I know this, that, and that, I live on the dirt, that for the last 100, 200 years, as this country has tried to attempt to become where they are today, every time I walk out of my door, there's a placard block to block that's basically the Smithsonian African American trail. And it's not a dirt road. These are houses and places. There's Langston Hughes and Walter Washington and so many other people. I'm 6-8 blocks. No, I'm less than 6-8 blocks from an all-black hospital next to a black college, sitting on the same dirt that there used to be a stadium, in a neighborhood that has been black from the first brick, in a district that has been created from the first brick by people of color, both free and enslaved, and yet respected due to the mere fact that they at least were purposeful. They were capable of being craftsmen and not just labor. And yet part of the experience and realization of all of this is, while I see it from a different perspective here, because here was the only place that they first, as a country, as a world perspective, freed all enslaved people before they freed all enslaved people, before they had to wait a couple of, months or whatnot, and find out that Texas wasn't trying to, free theirs. So we had to march down and give them Juneteenth. And the UK and every other country, France and all this other stuff, they ain't got Juneteenth. They ain't got Emancipation Day. They ain't got DC Emancipation. But they got the same kind of structure of minority people of color who aren't just labored. They're not insignificant anymore in our society, no more than we are. And yet, here we are trying to act like we have, a lion's share. We've got an exclusive on suffering as people of color, enough for me to scream the loudest, without realizing that, it's not that you're not suffering. It's not that the pain ain't real with you, but you ain't the only one who got it. And if you just get up off of some of yours, you might notice some of that too, but everybody ain't your enemy. But when they say you keep your friends close, but you keep your enemies closer, your enemies will always be more useful than some of the friends you find out ain't good friends after all.
Right? I see that the same as when men make decisions with their penis. So it's like we have ignored the sun factor, which is behind the moon, and the moon is just losing the not factor. It's like it's the most important thing.
So what is?
And it's like it's crazy where your penis will take you. It's crazy how much you will do for it. You get what I'm saying? And it's just like, no, you reach that level of clarity before you do it and just start.
How?
Hey, Lynn Skin, why don't you go over to my Facebook? Over to my YouTube.
About how
and
you feel
make a comment or something like that. See if you're hearing the sound bites off of my chip right now when I'm not speaking.
Yeah.
And the music and how it's coming out. Is it fuzzy?
I know, but why do you have to
whatnot?
slap a
Because,
compliment away?
I got so many things that are in so many places right now that I need a friend.
It feels painful to me that.
Painful?
Yeah, that I would get compliments because if we live in a world where I would get compliments for saying this stuff, it's only indicative of how bad the world is that we live in. It feels painful to me that.
Painful?
That I would get compliments because if we live in a world where I would get compliments for saying this stuff, it's only indicative of how bad the world is that we live in.
Bingo.
You understand what I'm saying?
I mean, yes.
Indicative of how bad we as men are failing, that you get compliments just for saying the right thing. So these people don't even normalize I could be doing the wrong thing, but just for saying the right thing.
Okay. And that's where the other, give us a break, that we as Black people, people of color, all over the planet, need to have a coming to Jesus moment, whether you like it or not. And that's the understanding that men are struggling with the same kind of discomfort that boys find most difficult to explain to their mothers. But their mothers. That it's not the same, mama. I could be everything that you tell me to be. But if I'm an ignorant Black boy that ain't really pretty, no matter how much you try to tell me, oh boy, stop acting like a little bitch. Had it not been for the women's suffrage that only became strong once sisterhood became paramount to such a degree that when our sisters jumped on the bandwagon with them, they jumped on full mind, body, and soul. And that's why it's harder for them to understand us because they think that that's the way them white women out there think about they men, because they're all feminists and sisters together, and they're going, no, girl, I'm sorry. And it's not that we're trying to dog talk down to women of color, especially when we try to tell them that, look, we know that right now you're in such a great place that all you need is a power man to be a power partner, and I can basically have it all. And never in the history of humanity, at any level of our society, until lately, have women been allowed to even say outwardly how dominant they feel the need for them to be, as a total conflict to misogyny. The same thing that we've been built and structured all of our lives to believe: if we're not a good man, then we're a punk. If we're not a good man, we ain't nothing. If we're not good enough, then you're not needed. You're wanted, but they ain't gonna jump backwards and kiss your butt for you to get the big head and think that you basically made it all and end up on some Scarface stuff. Who put this together? Me. That's who. Derrick Jaxn. He blew up so much that he swole up. If he was as big as he was right now, just athletically, he would have been a better ball player. And that's an honest to God truth. And if he had any sense, but he did what he was told to structure himself to do. And he complied with the social standards into which his parents and whatnot raised him, like many of these other people out here raised theirs. You go to graduate school, you go to college, you get married, you have some kids, you raise them, and you make your family proud. You be a good Negro. And yet, all right, well, when you get to wherever, you let me know. Now, here's where the rubber hits the road. The more that we find ourselves in a state, and I hate to even mention that the last 2-3 different skirmishes that I've had with completely educated within their own right, sisters, young women who really see things in the manner in which they do and are honestly correct. And their statement and observation of the caliber of men or compliable mates worth them, considering, falling into some form of dynamic. And honestly speaking, that in itself is so unnatural that when I say monogamy as we believe it to be is unhealthy, and it's even more unhealthy to people of color due to the mere fact that they've been trying to comply with it for the last almost 100 years, and it's resulted in us having the total inability to still hold the title of the most tight, organized, together, power to the people, supportive, dominant people raising the most bright and brilliant offspring this country has been built upon, bragging to the rest of the world, we got the best. This country was great when they had a bunch of doggone people of color inventing new and easier ways of making them more money. just for the mere fact that they thought that they were going to basically be given their fair share of something else, and yet nobody can understand how all of this revolves around a thing called union, because it was the only mindset that we thought, that we believed as a country, as a concept of a whole new world, past wherever, all the other things across all these other ponds, still comply with, and yet there's levels to this. And for many people that are out there in cyberland, it's even more complex, because just because you come from North Carolina or South Carolina or the East Coast or West Coast or an HBCU or Ivy League or whatever else you do, it don't make a hill of beans to somebody who's from the Bronx, from Jersey, from Tupelo, from Arkansas, or and things of that nature. You ain't from the bottoms, you ain't from the tops, you ain't from across the tracks, you don't this, that, and the other. And then it gets even more deeper when you realize, well, you ain't no Cosby. And because the best that they could provide you is, hey, your heart is kind of hurt over you not really honestly striving still today, regardless of what he ended up doing so far later. More Huxtable houses that are playing more seasons than most of y'all have been playing in your relationships.
It gets compliments. That's the level of madness that we're living in this world. For me, it's kind of sad in a way.
Each little bit helps and each little bit counts. You know how they say the butterfly effect, the butterfly flaps its wings, and then the next thing you know, Ashton Kutcher is in a movie.
If anything, one thing I would say is this, is like, when you look at the Derrick Jaxn,
lovely.
When you look at the amount of times that this has happened, these scenarios where men, there's things about them.
I'm gonna say this again.
I mean, not even just men.
Please go to the YouTube,
general, the people that we put
and watch this broadcast rather over.
About them.
Subscribe.
It's not just an indication
share.
of who they are, but an indication of where society really is.
It ain't cost you nothing.
Sometimes you look at the people in the comments and we make them
cash, so
the judge, jury, and executioner, but we don't know their lives either.
But I need for you to do this first, if you don't mind.
So how I look at humanity, I think everybody's got something. I think if we knew anybody's life in totality, there's something that they'd get cancelled for.
You find out again.
Something that we would look down on them for. So at this point, I'm just on some. Let's just try and work on where we are and do better. Sometimes you look at the people in the comments and we make them the judge, jury, and executioner, but we don't know their lives either. We don't know anybody's life. Sometimes you look at the people in the comments and we make them the judge, jury, and executioner, but we don't know their lives either. Sometimes you look at the people in the comments and we make them the judge, jury, and executioner, but we don't know their lives either. Sometimes you look at the people in the comments and we make them the judge, jury, and executioner, but we don't know their lives either. Sometimes you look at the people in the comments and we make them the judge, jury, and executioner, but we don't know their lives either. We don't know anybody's life. So how I look at humanity, I think everybody's got something.
Everybody.
I think if we knew anybody's life in totality, there's something that they'd get cancelled for. There's something that we would look down on them for. So at this point, I'm just on some. Let's just try and work on where we are and do better. I'm just on some. Let's just try and work on where we are and do better.
And to be honest, that's where I'm at. And I believe that's where Tanya and many of the other people that are out there, I believe that even Derrick and Keith and all these other people, the mindset, the instinct that they believe are no more different than what this young man has said from across the pond, a Brit that's in a whole different lane to such a degree that one of his biggest concerns is the disappointment of so many people in the comments who want to believe but have been so y'all ain't feeling me, are you?
thing. I don't want to be a no Derrick Jaxn thing where it's like I'm on a mountain looking down at some people. That's not how I want my thing to be, because at the end of the day, I feel like we just all have to accept that we're flawed people trying to figure it out, and not come from the position of, you know, of being dominant or being better than others.
How does it turn into that?
Because it's not necessarily that it turns into that for the person complimenting you, but the person complimenting you is not just the only person there. And that's what I've noticed. When a lot of people see somebody getting praised
In the comments.
right, there are other people that have a different reaction to that praise.
Come on, man.
Different people respond, and I've watched people do that with me on social
And it's
media.
not that they're
What do you
trying to
mean?
talk about
So,
you.
if you
We're just
see
saying
let's say somebody's
more
giving
than
me a
just you.
compliment, and I compliment, that's all great between me and that person. But there are other people that might have gone through things where they've heard somebody say something nice before. They've
Jim
heard somebody
Jones.
saying all the right words that turned out to be a scumbag, and watching me be thanked by somebody is triggering for them.
Triggering. We today, in this new world order of the new ages, in this new realm of the age of Aquarius, not the dawning that all of the baby boomers felt were so near that they almost nearly messed it up for everybody. Because once they realized that it wasn't happening in the 1950s and the 1960s, the people that they belonged to, the order and the structure into which existed in the realm into which our society was at that moment, called them back home. And we now are in a state where, for Americans, it became even worse because the Pandora's box never really opened fairly for any of us. It just opened our ability to see and desire, oh, I want that. You know, I want a Chevrolet. I want, nice Gucci bag. I want to live La Vida Loca. I want to be a Kardashian and have never been to Armenia or any of these other places to realize they ain't even white. They kick your butt. There are more white people in power right now that will kick your butt for calling them white while they dominated over you in society. That's real. And yet we still think that we are deserving of getting away with the same thing that the governor from New York is getting away with faster than Bill Cosby. He wasn't even a Negro. Socially, once he basically got to the point where he was one of the few Negroes at the high muckety muck thing, enough that, the hardest thing that he had to deal with each and every time is, wondering if, the reason why he's the only one, is partially for bragging rights from them or from them. And when they adopted those same kinks and fetishes, they came back and bit him more than it bit the guy who introduced him to all of this Spanish fly. And then we got these Derrick. He's got these Derrick dudes and all these other dudes like that. And these people are sitting back in a social structure that's so doggone subpar that even in their uppity Negro, in their regional environment of culture and color, that they believe that their mentors and their pastors and preachers and whatnot that have been guiding them to date has put them in a state where, this should just run, this should just, fly over. Come on, man. All I got to do is do the Jesus thing. Okay. All right. That didn't work. All right. If all else fails, then I need to go to the pulpit and cry. And if they see my big wear some tight pants. And if, and get a half heart on. And when I cry, I'm going to do this, then, maybe, some psychoanalysis person will come to them and say, oh, poor baby, he's not misogynistic. He just is suffering from a certain neglect from his mother. Why do we? I just can't stand no mama's boys wanting to lay all up on you, this, that, and the other, and yet the structure into which that whole 1950s dynamic actually demands the misogynistic thing, but unbeknownst to many people who want to do it now. Back then, it was role play. And they played that role every day, even when they had the same desires that you had. And that's the reason why they had Harlequin romance, where one night a tall, dark stranger everybody's always wanted that taboo, sensual desire to have some portion of flesh of color, that real exotic kind of thing, something so forbidden in their culture that they desire for it. That white comedian on Saturday Night Live that really, pointed out the mere fact that, that feminist white woman thing, you can fool all the black women and most of the black men and everybody else, but you can't fool white guy who nobody else can say, shut up. Because they're from and situated in that patriarchy that exists so much that he got a whole freaking show. Nobody stopped him and said, hey, don't say that. And that's not, you can't see no black dude in the same light having that and still not. The best you got is Nick Cannon, and he's still paying these people? Come on, man. I'm not being Semitic or anti or racist or sexist or homophobic or anything of that nature, but we got a whole lot of other things right now that are so intricate in why these things clash, and yet too many people in all of these different genetic or racist kind of cultures also revert back into the most dominant of it. And so while we want to run out and be as free in the LGBTQIA, whatever, when we want to be as feminist can be, at the end result, the image of how that sister, that political sister, went down in her own town and got not just arrested, but a felony for knocking on a damn door, is still not trending as much as this Derrick Jaxn bullshit with what was so-called the masses of upper metaphysical people of color who really believe that they should be allowed to have a person of wealth, a high value partner. And there ain't enough of us to go around. Ain't enough. More women than there are men. Even if every doggone man picked a woman, there'd still be a whole bunch of women not picked. Once you also take out the L and the B and the G and the T and the QIA, and then that takes it out, only for the mere fact that in people of color in America, especially culture, we don't count them. And the reason why we've never counted them up to date is because we hate to show the white folks that we got some of them too. And yet, the majority of all of the most authentic people we got have been more that than like you, as whoever you think you are, watching me have the audacity to point in your black direction. And I think I'm digressing.
When people respond, and I've watched people do that with me on social media.
What do you mean?
So if you see let's say somebody's giving me a compliment and I compliment, that's all great between me and that person. But there are other people that might have gone through things where they've heard somebody say something nice before. They've heard somebody saying all the right words that turned out to be a scumbag, and watching you be thanked by somebody is triggering for them, because when they think about it, they see
just Jim Jones,
before.
But now
They've seen this pattern of somebody being touted. There's somebody that might have been hurt by Derrick Jaxn, for instance.
This ain't even just pimps in the pulpit.
Receiving this kind of praise before, only for them to be
this
torn
is
down.
F-boys can't even get to the altar.
And so via the very praise, it actually triggers them, because it makes them annoyed, because it's like, why do we keep praising these people when we don't know them? Like, I just don't think it should be a praise thing. Like, it's just a shame. In my opinion, it's a shame. And it's just wiser to be like that, because you look at the Derrick Jaxn. Sometimes we put people in a position that they can't handle as well. Sometimes it was all right where they were,
Should have stayed.
Put them in a position that is, because your morality has to match the mountain that you're on. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want my success to go any higher than my morality, because then
Okay. It's another thing. As I listen to this brother of color from Britain, within his own right, speak from his observation of how life has allowed him to at least advance and exist today. And I match that with the Derrick Jaxns and the Keefs and the Eddie Murphys, and we can go all the way down the line, all the way back to Adam Clayton Powell's. It's a whole different thing each and every time, because today's society has gotten such an access to this whole worldwide perspective that it's lost the ability for them to realize that it wasn't the same for everybody everywhere. And that even if you didn't care about how, you had to, respect the regional habits and existences, as you travel the planet or whatnot, most people are not equipped to even accept the struggle our generations, our ancestors went through to get us where we are here today, and not be capable of being able to answer some of these questions the best that they could, as the only people you would probably respect. If your great-great-grandmother ancestor just popped up in your bed or up on top of you or in your head, and you knew unequivocally, this is my great ancestor giving me the pep talk of all pep talks. Oh, ancestor, I am humbled. Speak to me. And they say, if I was you, I'd be looking for the pimples on the booty. And instead of them understanding that it takes a village, and at a level, and every time you find yourself in a state where you'd hate to have this kind of freedom that comes with this kind of duty of doing something that this patriotic society has built as privilege, and still not be able to understand that misogynistic kind of instinct is even worse when you're not even capable of being a beta boy who thinks that they can handle an alpha woman who ain't even alpha to an alpha man. And it's not gender, because now that we have the permission, at least in this country now, to respect the same status of same-sex partners, respectful. They pay their taxes, they do this whole thing, and they're a credit to the community. As long as your ass don't doggone turn your nose up at what they do on a daily basis in their own bedroom. Enough that they can keep doing it to be stable enough that as they start off this journey of till death do us part, and let's raise our kids in our community and this, that, and the other, they don't collect hit and misses enough that when they get on their single sites, it's the one thing they're not afraid to admit when they sit back and go, what is the time of your last relationship? How long have you been in a relationship? You know, as in a manner of going, oh, I can go 2 years. Oh, I can go 4 years. Oh, it's been a while, though. The mere fact that monogamy doesn't have those kind of numbers to allow you to have the audacity that you believe you deserve when you attempt to have this kind of commitment to be all that they need with the agreed statement of, you know, baby, this your ding-a-ling and just yours. To have and to hold, you take care of it and this, that, and another, baby. You can't put no racehorse in your backyard. You live in the city. You ain't got but 4 feet. And yet we try to compete with every doggone Joneses or whatnot as we seek to have ourselves a high value black mate. And we in such a state we can't even handle keeping at least a passionate emotional connection. Worth saying, man, all I want is this right here. Because we fear that if we can't say, it's not about just you, but what do you want to do? Because the people who made you did more than we're doing right now. We're not going to become extinct like that pure white race is about to think they can outlast us. People of color are growing by leaps and bounds because we are baby's kids. And just like most black families, the dark-skinned ones always get mad because the light-skinned ones keep getting lighter. And as black as we want to be pro-black about being pro-black, what we lack more than any other race of people on this earth right now is the mere fact that it's not just here. You know, side guys even explaining to you how the UK, to Africa, France, everywhere for people of color that are now growing into a high upper metaphysical value state hate the mere fact that they just can't have it like everybody else in the markets that they aspire to be included into. One. And yet for people like these American supposed to be high value people like the Derrick Jaxn wannabe uppity Negroes, you know, they aspire to, you know, go down to Atlanta or go to Miami or Vegas and have a good time. And me and my man side guy would love it in Monaco. Oh my God, we can go in that mug like James Bond. That's when it's on. We've got Kanye can't even do that every day because they don't even know, but they've learned. And that's something that we have to earn by understanding, yes, we don't have that many secrets between the genders of people of color. We're just punks about it. And until we can resurrect our women in a manner where they don't grow bigger balls than half of the doggone bottom boys that they love and having, but they can't make a house husband, no more than they can even be transparent about how good of a hoe they were before they got married in the first place.
Won't be able to manage it? We look at the Derrick Jaxn. Sometimes we put people in a position that they can't handle as well. Sometimes they was all right where they were, you know, and then you put them in a position that is because your morality has to match the mountain that you're on. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want my success to go any higher than my morality, because then I won't be able to manage it.
That's the whole problem, bottom line of not the Derrick Jaxn story, but the NaiaJaxn, his wife. She was raised to be a saxophone player, not a drum major. She hadn't been groomed that way. She ain't been groomed that way no more different than that Megan girl was groomed to be able to handle being the new princess in the kingdom. And even the queen can't just sit back and, you know, have her snuffed out. Oh, she's just one of those. Shut up. You always think what you're dingling anyway. I'm the queen. God save the queen. It ain't like them white folks that we want to be like are doing any better with this shit. But we don't fit into the same doggone conundrum that those Brits are dealing with. And the only good sign we have about the mere fact that what we are on to is where we're going to, is the mere fact that that side guy exists enough to be able to see in this market how it's not just me. It's not just many of y'all. It's the mere fact that we don't want to look at little broadcasts like these, and no matter how entertaining and informative or enlightening they try to be in their own special little way, we can't find any day that we follow them or not as proof that we really are trying to and we ain't no more different than anyone else, but we are at our best when we're more in control of what is best for us, is best for our family dynamics, is best for our uplifting of whatever race we believe that we want to build and believe and understand that the best way to allow all of these other places around the world that now are able to achieve at least a better level than they've ever had all over these, they're black people coming up. They almost got their own money and had to kill Gaddafi to slow it down because they still on some global Malcolm X bullshit. And yet we still trying to say the way the Kennedys got killed is the same way that Malcolm got killed. And that's bullshit. And the only thing that's missing is while Martin had a dream, he had one wife. He had many women, but he had one wife. And if you ever read her book, you can't find it unless you know where to look at the mere fact that the shoulder she cried on is the one man who made sure that she would never have to worry about the time that her husband is killed, dies. She will not be without. Even her husband. And I don't have to say who it was, but I'm trying to tell you that we're ill-equipped to handle the high value morality because we have been structured to believe that anything that Derrick and his wife did was wrong, more than the mere fact that they had no idea why, if they knew how to handle it better, be open, be transparent, be fair, and be equal, as much as Derrick blew up physically and sexually, he did it at the demise, at the discomfort of a wife that's still trying to be a wife. And she don't know what that really honestly means, because how do you put a racehorse in the backyard not even the rapper the stallion can handle a stallion in itself? But you do know that some of the most rarest of breeds come from the ability to breed a power couple and its offspring in such a manner that its offspring only adapts the strength of both to make the better, to beat the best. That's the game we're in, that we claim we want so badly, and yet we keep pumping out more and more offspring that's got to watch us on a daily basis, go through all of this celebrity gossip and whatnot that affects our everyday life, that we go around so frustrated that we feel like we need to suffer in the same suffering that somebody else that's really suffering is suffering just in solidarity. And when black men tell a black woman, man, you're scaring me,
And then you see many mighty men torn down that way. I just don't feel like that's the way. Okay, so side man, it's kind of like an insult. So it's kind of like, it's like the guy on the side kind of thing, like a side chick and a side man aren't really the same thing. Like a side chick only refers to, you know, the girl on the side, but a side man is like lettuce, like you calling somebody like literally just like, it's a diss. But I call myself side man because the style of comedy that I do is mainly, you know, self-deprecating.
All right, let's fix this. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Sideman Derrick from the UK.
Definitely, but the treatment.
Now, all of the points that I've just basically shared with you came from TanyaTKO's initial connection with this cat that she turned us all on from the UK. And what makes it so much of a gem is just the mere fact that it's him. And I think, before I play this little last part, we're going to go along with this because, well, it's free.
The treatment is governed by the hierarchy. Men are not trying to impress women. They are trying to impress manhood, not men. Manhood, the idea of what being a man is. I don't impress girls to impress girls. I impress girls to impress myself and tell myself, yeah, you're a man because you get bare gal. And now I'm trapped in this relationship and I can't feed that ego. I can't do the things that makes a man feel like a man. This is all subconscious a lot of the times, but it's happening. A man in a relationship is a tamed lion watching his friends roar all over the place while he meows in his household. But as a whole, I believe until more men acknowledge patriarchy,
you're
not the word or the dictionary definition, but that innate feeling that makes him value his feelings and wants and desires above women, and tries to create a fairer mind. You will continue to see these things because rarely will a being be beholden to someone they deem lesser than themselves.
Of cancel. That we really honestly, have this mentality of, no, hell no, oh, hell no. More than ever before, to the point where, we don't even like the mere fact that, we've never had an issue with the reality that, the things that our men and our women were breeded for and what we believe to have been, a colonial slavery kind of structure, our masters. We still have in this instinctual, mental, and spiritual war in our own minds at a level that if we made more money, we can find a better healthcare plan to be able to get a better therapist to help us understand what the hell is, where am I evolving? Because when you want to step your game up to be in a high value game where you're not just getting in because you just want to make six figures, you're getting in because you want to make an existence that's so stable that money don't even matter. You're at such a state of partnership, of purpose, that you can make millions and lose millions and make more millions and lose millions and make so many more millions that by the time that you get good at it, you'll find yourself in the same doggone footsteps that Mr. 45 pulled off. And as Americans, no matter how much you want to hate how it made everybody else in their state be, the reality of this is, out of all the presidents that will be able to study in our history, we'll have to pinpoint the mere fact that right after the first doggone black man, or they got another run because, but not that black. Don't you slip and try to act like, okay, Negro, you got your 4, get out the door. The audacity of the mere fact that most of the people of non-color and of color were so in their feelings that they couldn't really understand how it got pulled off. Only doggone president you ain't got to hear nothing for right after he got out of the doggone office. And even when you had one that was screwing up, this dude was like, hey, y'all, hey. And we still waiting on a picture of Mr. Obama to find his way to the doggone Oval. 5, almost 6 years later. So I'm not trying to be a hater. But even his wife couldn't have a say when white folks always had Jackie O. And while everybody's still trying to dance around this, oh, we're feminists like all the other feminists. No, you ain't. And don't you think that just because you want to be a Kardashian or or one of those fantasy soap opera people, are the image of the Harlequin romances that we would get from second or third hand from, the mistress who secretly withheld that from her husband, who was basically living La Vida Loca in the patriarchy and the misogyny of our history.
Definitely, but the treatment is governed by the hierarchy. Men are not trying to impress women. They are trying to impress manhood, not men, manhood, the idea of what being a man is. I don't impress girls to impress girls. I impress girls to impress myself and tell myself, yeah, you're a man because you get bare, girl. And now I'm trapped in this relationship and I can't feed that ego. I can't do the things that makes a man feel like a man. This is all subconscious a lot of the times, but it's happening. A man in a relationship is a tamed lion watching his friends roar all over the place while he meows in his household.
Now, that phrase, a man who's a lion, becomes a married man and learns how to meow while all of his single friends run wild. And yet, the initial title of one of my past broadcasts makes more sense right now when you think about how, we've always hated that little quiz, how to make a hoe, a housewife. Wow, it sounds so weird to you. Not so long ago, there was a thing called My Fair Lady. And if we can't free ourselves from this conflict that we believe is our moral standard, that we are held to such an allegiance, that we can't shake ourselves and forsake all others at the level of partnership that's built the whole patriarchy, that this humanity has recorded as where we've come from and where we're at, and where many of you younger people can go if you knew what it's saying is not just true, but not for you. It's for the children of the children you are claiming as your community, claiming as your next generation to come, that you say you want to reach one and teach one. The reality is, if you ain't got no faith that it's possible that they can have it better than you ever had it before, then you don't know how you got here from all the other people who are not capable of being able to get close to having this much freedom. If mama and them back in the 30s and the 40s and the 20s and the 19s and the 1800s had the same kind of leverage, if Scarlett O'Hara had the same kind of leverage from that Confederacy, that this would be a more perfect union. And I see this in the same structure as I see a union. It's only as good as its members. It's not a selfish sport. It's a creed and a duty to make sure that this craft is respected as professional with purpose. And yet we keep being punks about the fact that even when we get more money and more problems, we still keep wishing that whatever we got was not as good as what we could probably get if we wasn't still trying to sit and hope that, that tomorrow was going to be a better day and we're going to find a better way of being able to exist respectfully in the midst of us not necessarily being protectively to anybody. And we're building secrets and we can't open our mouths because we got so many bones stuck in our throat that we can't even doggone fight for our right to vote, because we still hope that it could just be them and not them too, or none of us can get past the audacity. Look, I am Queen so-and-so. Don't you talk to me like that. I ain't no black guy with a white hat. But I know it can happen. I know we got the technology because light-skinned dudes have shown us the way. And if we can be allowed to be more than just a big black eggplant out here trying to talk to the rest of the world in his car, when had he started the same talk every time he talked with his wife included, his situation, his life, and his dynamic would not stop anybody from, oh man, they're sitting on bated breath right now. They're hoping that each time that they might peep out and do a broadcast or something like that, it would be, ooh, oh, world star. Oh, you work it, baby. This, that, and the other. And yet we keep forgetting the mere fact that the same doggone situation that child, his wife, is in right now is the same kind of situation that Harry's wife, Meghan, is in, on a whole different perspective. The difference is that he's really not, in that kind of market where if they need a little extra money, he can get on there and say, buy my book. Not like Derrick and them can, be in the tutelage or the mentorship of like Tyler Perry or Oprah. But I hope that y'all really get something from whatever is left in this, because that's all I got.
As a whole, I believe until more men acknowledge patriarchy, not the word or the dictionary definition, but that innate feeling that makes him value his feelings and wants and desires above women and tries to create a fairer mind, you will continue to see these things, because rarely will a being be beholden to someone they deem lesser than themselves.
And that's the bottom line. It's not that anybody doesn't deserve anything better than what they got, but nobody deserves anything more than they're willing to work for. They're willing to convince each other that forsaking all others, you and me, can at least blow up. That we get so rich that we don't need money, that we get so privileged that we don't even need to have to ask permission to be happy on our own, because everyone else is happy too, equally enough that they can do it fairly enough to register it as a tax deduction. Why? Because we're sponsoring a few couples, or a couple of people and a couple of families. Most of these single mothers didn't get as far as they got by the government. This side chick mentality is what we've been raised to think. We just got no responsibility because we got no sympathy. We got no empathy. It's all apathy. And every time that a woman tries to find a way to not be able to relate to a man, there's another man that can't basically make their mama proud, because every woman is a mama, but few of them are mothers. And if they're the mother of the earth, if they're the all-powerful, if they're the this, that, and the other, then we as a people should not be going through the amount of conflict. All of these doggone typos, these things are getting. Oh, they're cheating. Oh, they're cheating. Oh, they're cheating. Oh, they're cheating. We think that cheating is such a bad thing that we can't even see how if you really love somebody who really loved you to the point that there was nothing that you couldn't do that could stop you from loving them and them you, ain't no telling what you could do better. And we are right now going through the same problems that's going on all over the world, but it's different in America. And that's why this broadcast includes Tanya, and it includes Side Guy from the UK too. And me, Alpha Master Pimp Easy, active dominant, child of a civil rights movement with a good government clearance here at WNDC. NDC. WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. NDC. And I stand on the dirt and the bricks of something that has been so unique for so long that if there was a reason to aspire to be something, then right here, right now, is the last time that we would need to use anyone else as a crutch. Yeah. If you don't believe that any of us are worth believing in, then you are our weakest link. And we've got too many weak links that are not brave enough to stand up and fix something that if it was old grandma or mama them from the 40s and the 30s and the 20s and the 1800s, nobody would disrespect mama them. And so when we want to call ourselves feminists today, that have always had it that way, and we suffer from this misogynistic social aspect that existed, it never existed like that for us when we were slaves. Not all of us, but everybody knew Big Mama. And somehow we got everything now but them and the women that are now Big Mama. And they're not Big Mama. And they've raised generation after generation of some perfectly good beta men. Because we've gone through 50, 60 years of beta power, elitist, Illuminati, white, perverted motherfuckers trying to snuff out every possibility that today there'll be more of us available for more of you who are really honestly right now trying to figure out why is there not anything more perfect for you. It's not your fault. It's not our fault. The fault no longer even matters. But first you got to realize you didn't become emancipated as a black, strong woman because the feminist movement gave you the right to be that way. Before that way, Mammy was the dominant of that household. And it's always been that way. We raised every white man that owned us. And if the cost of what you think feminism has done for women made women of color weak enough to not be able to see how they lost something for the solidarity of trying to hold down a allegiance. Oh man, I speak up for every woman first. And Mammy was not that kind of, shut up. I don't know nothing about birth for no babies. Because I make 6 figures. The same scenes and Gone with the Wind. Can't begin to doggone wake up our own sisters who claim that they want something of value and can't even find money on the ground. I don't have much more to say, man. All I can say is, look, Black people of color in this country, in this society, can fix a whole lot of the world. Fixing where we're at right now. There's nothing stopping us from having more than what we want. If it wasn't for the mere fact that we were actually thinking that we've grown to a state where we have to have it on our own. I want $50 million. What you gonna do with it? Nothing. Whatever I feel like doing. That's $50 million out of this doggone economy. It's not supporting anything. More money, more problems. Nobody wants to be a slave, but nobody wants to be a better slave owner. And yet, Edith Vilar described the power of this patriarchy, not being this man, but this misogyny that existed for every other woman than the woman that ran that patriarch's house. Because she was the secret to what a kingdom and in his world, Mr. Side Guy in the UK, he sees it every day. And he still sings God Save the Queen, even if it takes a little alcohol to get him there. This is WNDC. WNDC stands for We in the Crib and You Ain't. But I think I got it all, man. I'm about to go have me some pizza, smoke me some reefer, and enjoy the rest of my time in DC. Totally not impressed with the community that's available to me, and well, I may not be the prettiest one in the bunch. I ain't no doggone Derrick.